So, hello and welcome. My name is Steve Pugh. It's Monday, the 10th of October, 2022. I do various different podcasts, but this one is called a Growth Strategy Podcast, where we try and introduce you to interesting people that can help your business or career. I try and pick people that I kind of know, just so there's some authentic link there than just randos. But then also, I think it's really important to speak to real people that have been on their real journey, that are actually kind of going through a lot of this stuff yourselves, that hopefully there's real value that you can kind of learn from. And we talk about real topics and people's journey and their backstory and what they were like at school. But the idea is to kind of create a community and actually just share the stories of interesting people that, yes, it's wonderful to hear from Elon Musk and, all of the famous billionaires, but actually for 99% of the world's population, I think it's a different audience. So I purposely go that route as opposed to trying to get on kind of famous people. So Susie, who I'm going to introduce you to today, we actually worked on a project relatively recently. She's a learning and development expert, but also she's run her own business for a long time. And I think it's a really interesting kind of story to kind of go through. So if you get involved on any of the channels we broadcast on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and lots of others, YouTube, and also this also gets clipped up and goes onto Google, iTunes, Spotify, and a lot of the podcast kind of platforms as well. But if you want to join us for the next 30, 40 minutes, if you send me a message, it should pop up on the screen. Happy to bring in any comments and that kind of thing. And also you can follow us now on Instagram as well. So hopefully if you're just on the bus, that could work as well. So Susie, there we go. People can now see you and hear you.
Hi, Steve. Good to see you.
It looks very sunny. Where are you based? I'm trying to remember.
Yes, I'm based in Windsor. They're originally from the northeast. I'm in Windsor, and it's a lovely sunny day down.
No, fantastic. So I'm trying to think, how do we know each other? So we worked on a project quite recently together, and I think that's
Yes,
how
you
we got
did.
introduced. But again, because I really enjoyed the process, and we'll talk about that in a second. But again, I think it's just important to me, the key buzzword all the time is authenticity when you create content and you do stuff. That I hate fake banter. So purposely, when you get a guest on, I try not to have too much pre-chat about how was your Monday and stuff, because when it's being repeated twice, you can tell it's fake, and it's that kind of. But I also, love to kind of just genuinely catch up with people and see how they're doing.
Yeah, that's good. Well, delighted to be here. And as you know, as you say, we met through collaboration, and that's one of the biggest lessons for me in being in my own business. Some of the best things I've got, and some of the people that I've met have been through collaboration.
Yeah, cool.
So it's really good to be here.
Perfect. Would you be happy to give like a quick intro, just who you are, where you're from, and this will set the scene. And then when we go through, and we'll dig into your backstory and how you got started. But I just think like a nice, good summary to start with. Is that okay?
Okay, let me see if I can do that in 30 seconds. So, geographically, originally from the northeast of England, so Newcastle was my home for many years, though I live now in Windsor and have done for a while because it's easier to get about because I work in the UK and internationally. And my expertise is in leadership development, management development, and teams. My background is I started off in HR, then learning, and working in organisational development in the Northeast, working for financial services. And I grew up through the ladder, and I just knew one day I wanted to set up my own business or work for myself. And I first jumped 20 years ago. I set up on my own, and then I've been through 3 different transitions of either self-employment, running a small business, and to where I am now at a company called 42 Think, which is a boutique consultancy. So still some connections in the UK, but we're kind of a collaboration.
No, it's good. I love your top, by the way. They're butterflies.
Very good. Yes, they are. I just thought, the weather's turning, and I want to keep the summer. I don't want to let it go yet.
No, I must. It's
Yeah.
the weather in the northeast has officially changed. I think people
Oh,
started
really?
to put the heating on, I think 2 weeks ago. And
Yeah.
it's more common than not that it's now dark at 5 p.m. But you can tell it's just getting cold. So I'm
hmm
jealous of your sunshine, which is
Yeah, it is lovely. I remember those days well, but no time for a big coat just yet.
no,
It's far too early.
true.
Yeah,
So you mentioned you grew up in the northeast.
I did.
Whereabouts?
In Ponteland, so a little village near the airport, so about 10 miles
The posh
northwest
bit.
of Newcastle. Some people say that, yes. That's why I keep getting told I don't have much of an accent. So, yes, that's where I grew up. But actually, I was born in Newcastle and lived my first few years in Newcastle. So I am officially a Geordie. I can claim that.
No, that's fair enough. And then what you like at school? Were you rebellious? Were you a bit of a swot? What were you like?
I was quite quiet. I did push the edges a little bit, but very rarely in trouble. I was brilliant when I was interested in something, or where the learning methods or the teacher was fascinating. But other than that, I really didn't like just learning information for information's sake. I just didn't get it, and I think that's something I've carried
Hmm.
with me.
But I think that's true. I think one of the big things that I get is that when the whole copy paste education model, I get why that was how it was always done in the past. And it
Hmm.
works for probably the majority of people, but it's going to exclude really either the bright people that don't like just copy paste doing stuff that you feel ahead of. But then
Yeah.
vice versa, you also get people that aren't academic, that don't learn through reading and whichever, that are
Hmm.
forced to do it. And the one thing that kind of blows my mind, I'm just about old enough, I don't know if they still do it. The kids that were left-handed were forced to write with their right hand, and it's just like,
Mm,
I don't know if they still do that, but it's just bonkers. But the way
yeah.
that the education system was almost built was copy paste, gobble it, and then do an exam.
Hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
because of that, a lot of people that now you see a lot of common traits in entrepreneurs and people that kind of do their own businessy stuff, because it's that slight rebellion against trying to do it a different way,
Hmm.
a better way. So
Yeah.
did you go
Yeah.
to sixth form or university?
No, left at 16 when I could do that. I was desperate to leave school and get out into the real world. I was inspired to work. Working up, I had a really strong role model in my grandfather, who did his engineering apprentice in the shipyards
Hmm.
at Wallsend, and then worked at the family engineering business, which was a global business. And he always said, work comes first, and he was just a brilliant role model. And I didn't know quite what I wanted to do in the world, but
Hmm.
I wanted to make my mark. And interestingly, as soon as I left and I found my passion, then I started to study, and I studied back to back, part-time evening classes for about 7 years. Once I found my passion, what I really wanted to do.
So what is your passion then?
It's people. It comes as no surprise. And HR, well, in fact, personnel as it was then. I realised I'd had a couple of office jobs, and while it was interesting and a little bit engaging, and I loved the people, I wanted something more. And I came across personnel, and then at Sunderland and Northumbria Universities, Newcastle Poly as it was then, I studied through qualifications in HR and then my CIPD, because I was just fascinated about people in the world of work, how to make it the best that you can for them, and how and why they excel. So that's what started my career after a couple of years not knowing really, like many people, what on earth you want to do, and then moving into that, and then eventually finding my first role in HR, which was just great. It was really exciting.
No, cool. And hello to our friends in Thailand as well. I'll just apologize now. I never know how to say your name, so I never want to say it in case I get it wrong. But I promise I do appreciate it when people get involved. And I think, Susie, that's the wonder thing for me now, especially with the internet. You can hit people literally in Thailand or around the world from the northeast of England, off Windsor, and just the
Yeah.
ability for reach and to share knowledge and share learning and that kind of thing as well. I think is always
Mhm.
important. But likewise with the broadcast, just to
Absolutely.
acknowledge people. And I love it when people that find value and stuff as well. Because one of the things that I rarely see on a weekly basis is the amount of people that will watch content and learn content and suck it in, but they never respond, they never like it, but they still get the value, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah,
always funny that
absolutely.
as someone who is a professional teacher, stroke engage or whatever, to really try and get engagement's tough. And it's just,
Hmm.
but anyway, but with, I think it was true for me as well that I didn't really know what my passion was until relatively recently. And I went from, because I was always quite good at school, but I didn't enjoy it, and I was a bit rebellious and a little bit naughty. I just wanted to
Hmm.
fit in. It's just,
Okay.
but as soon as I got the fire and the flame and I got my thing, oh, then there's no stopping
Yeah.
because you want to go for it. And I was just wondering with you, so what is it about leadership and development and HR that really kind of floats you about? What is it that it makes you passionate?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll try and summarize it because there's a lot in there. There's definitely something around these people in any size of business. So, whether it be a solopreneur with stakeholders, whether it be a small business or a global corporate with different divisions, the leaders, the people managers make a huge difference. Even post pandemic, people spend a lot of time at work, either remotely or face to face now. Um, but leaders and managers can make a huge difference to how engaged someone is, whether they release their potential. And a lot of them aren't given that kind of support when they're given this responsibility of people and delivering results. They're not given support. I know the first time I was given a team, when I managed a team in a building society, I wasn't really given that direction. I didn't know what kind of leader I was, but I had a bunch of people that I was accountable for, their well-being, their welfare, understanding them, knowing what makes them tick. And I think anything that I can do to support them and make a difference, that's what I want to do. That's how I make a difference through the work that I do.
Oh, cool. So again, one of the conversations I have a lot is that I especially agree. Almost, I think that university shouldn't be the default route. So I do love it when people go into careers, because I think you actually learn so much more than, yes, okay, it's quite a nice life experience and you can go and get pissed for 3 years and do whatever. But actually, truth be told, like, I don't have kids, but if I did, I would probably recommend the work experience route, because so much about what you do, but also life in general, is the people skills, the side to it, the work ethic. Yes, it's nice to have the certificate on the wall, but actually you learn most of your practical skills actually doing stuff. And
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. I think a couple of things. First of all, I think nowadays, as you say, it used to be that we open people's heads, pour some stuff in at school, they've got to learn it, and it teaches you how good you are at exams. And depending on your career path and what you do, you may or may not use all of the information that you learn, some of which is random, some of which is useful. But actually, I think all of us have different types of intelligence. They have different types of skills, and somebody might be very, very practical. They might be brilliant at people. They might be good at supporting others. They might be brilliantly academic or really good at strategy. And for me, it's about finding out what people are good at and their own, unique superpower. And I think all of us should do that. And the earlier we can do it, the better. So I think, yes, having a series of routes. And my dad went through the traditional university route, and I was very fortunate because my granddad didn't. So I had, and both were, in any sense, successful, enjoyed what they do. And I think that me and my siblings had this understanding that there wasn't just one route to success, which is good, and we were not put under pressure. And I think it's the same at work, even in leadership. It used to be that we think, okay, we work hard, we get promoted, and then we work hard, then we get promoted. And there was a linear route to success. And what I love about nowadays at work, a couple of things. One is that there is this idea of a portfolio of career that lots of people are using, the likes of this, because the world is so small because of digital now, and having a series of jobs, roles, careers, passions, some of which make money and others which don't. So I think it's great that we don't just have one job or one career route. The other thing that we're seeing, particularly in leadership, is leadership isn't necessarily working your way up a ladder traditionally. Leadership can be thought leadership, project leadership, strategy, leading a business, whether it be your own business or whether it be within an organization. And of course, it can be really good people or management. And I think helping people to understand that fit, where is it that I have real strengths and this passion, and what does the world need? I think that's a fit for both, because you're going to excel and be engaged, and somebody's really going to get the best out of you. So I think that's why it's important that people understand themselves, and even children. There isn't just that one route. I absolutely agree.
Can I ask about your career? So
Yeah, sure.
What was your first job?
My first job was I was on the minimum wage, and I was working for a very small startup business who made clothes. They were brilliant, award-winning. They made clothes for people that had had mastectomies, and I was the admin assistant and worked with them. I didn't know at the time, but to help grow the business, and I loved it because there was a big purpose to it. The people were lovely, and we were making a difference. While I was working there, I realised it wasn't a forever job, and then found out about personnel, studied part-time in evenings, and then moved into financial services, working in HR, and then moved on to into building society, then bank, working my way up in the traditional route, and worked on some brilliant projects, from leading training teams to exciting time in financial services, working on mergers and acquisitions, but always the people side of it. So what does this change mean to people? How can we support them through this? How can we help our people to enable results for the business and for them? So it's always looking through the lens of people.
Oh, I've got you.
So that's a very short cut of my career.
At what point in your career do you think you had the mindset shift to go from most people do the job they're told to do? Does that make sense? And at a certain point, you probably twigged, well, actually, if we do this, 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 and this, we can really accelerate more people. Or was that always in from the start? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I think so. That's interesting. I think where I worked latterly and where I seemed to excel, interestingly, and I hadn't thought about this before, was where you were given guide rails, you were told what the deliverables were, you were given budget, a team of people, department, and left you to get on with it. And one of my personal values is about freedom and being able to do that. And I love creativity, and I love a challenge and finding a route, either myself or with other people. And interestingly, that context, those circumstances suited me really, really well, so that I could find out the how myself. And that's one of those things that when I speak to leaders, I think unless you've got a very high risk activity or someone who's brand new and inexperienced, as far as you can, give them something, anything to manage, give them a part to play, and help them become autonomous. And I had quite a bit of autonomy, which I think really helped me to find my own way.
No, I completely agree. I think it's that autonomy is the big thing, that often if you spoon feed people, they always want to be fed. Does that sound really silly? And yes, like from my engineering background and the companies that I work with, where we make critical offshore stuff, you can't just wing it. There's very strict.
Yes.
But I do agree with you. It's the ownership and the engagement. Say, actually, look, this is the program, this is a project. How do you think we should do it? I'm really kind of engaging that early on. What's your view on if that can be taught or not? Because my big things, I was in Cubs and Scouts growing up, and from the age of 6 when I first joined Beavers, because my parents were involved with the leadership, so I was allowed to join early. But then you have sixers, seconders, and then what's it called? And basically, you're taught leadership to take your troop and do a first aid competition and do stuff. But the point is, I think certain people are good at leadership and others less so. But I didn't know what your thoughts were on the topic. Is it from an early age, or is it something that you can teach?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that old, are you born or are you made? Of course, I've got to say that you can be taught or enabled, because that's why I do what I do. I think there are some people that naturally show some kind of leadership ability, whether that be leading from the front, whether that be engaging people and getting people to run with them behind something, behind the goal. So I think some people show those traits, but they don't necessarily know that they're leadership traits. We just see them in people. But absolutely, you can teach them. I think the important thing is that there isn't a one size fits all. It's about understanding, to go back to your point, so important about authenticity, because some leaders are brilliant spokespeople. They're the front of the organization, they're charming, they're really good in front of camera. Others are very quiet behind the curtain, as I call it, and they're the ones that set the strategy and understand the big picture and how everything knits together. And then there are others that are actually brilliant at the people side of things. And unless you know, number one, where your natural strengths are, and then number two, helping you to put those into practice, because it's not about being brilliant at everything or trying to be like another type of leader, but it's what are your strengths and where are maybe your blind spots, and how can you either find a workaround or how can you use that to the best of your ability, or maybe just shape that a little bit.
No, it's interesting. It's just because I'm a sports coach, and what I'd love is that you can be the most valuable player on the team, but you don't have to be the most skilled. But there's someone. It's just it's hard. It's hard to articulate what it is. But I think leadership you can physically demonstrate just through hard work and encouraging others. And I was just interested. I know there will be dictionary definitions about what it is.
Yeah.
But I always like to relate it to other things, because for me, you also don't have to be the top to be a good
Mhm.
leader.
Mhm.
You know, you could be a recent
Absolutely.
graduate and just show leadership and picking up litter and caring about what you do, which I think is
Mhm.
pretty cool. So you mentioned right at the start about how you kind of always knew you wanted to do your own business at some point.
Mhm.
Talk me
Yeah.
through that journey. What was it that excited you about maybe doing your own thing?
I think that partly inspired by my grandfather. I think, as you say, that entrepreneurial thing, and it just sounded like an exciting, interesting thing to do. I didn't know much more than that, and also this idea of being in charge of my own destiny. And I thought, even if I try it out and it
Hmm.
doesn't work or it's not for me, I'd like to give it a go. And I think too many people try it out, and then they've tried it, which is a good thing, and they realize it's not for them, or at that time in life it's not for them, and then they move on. And I think that's absolutely good. Anyone that goes on this journey for however long is brilliant. It's such a brave thing to do. And I think it was that independence. I think it was making a mark, making some decisions, and having that autonomy for me was what I'd always been interested in. But I'd always put it off. Like
Hmm.
so many people out there who are listening, who are going to either relate, who started
Hmm.
up their own business, or who are thinking of it, there's some kind of fear because we're wired to not like change, or our brains really like to keep us within our comfort zone. Even if we're not happy, we know it's familiar. And I remember in the 7 months that I took to plan to open my business, we all know there's so much to do. And then you think, right, well, it's all done. 2 months beforehand, I had a massive panic. I thought, what are you doing? Because at that stage, I had a very good job, secure salary, car pension, all the things that go with that. And I was giving that up for literally one day of work that I'd managed to secure, because I wanted some space between them. And ethically, I didn't want to do both. And I had a big wobble, I wobbled when I said to people what I was doing. And interestingly, they were in one of two camps.
Hmm.
So this was 20 years ago. It might have changed. And people either said, do you know, go for it. Because I was 29 when I did
Wow.
that. And they either said, you know, brilliant, go for it. Even if it doesn't work, you've tried it, before you buy the bigger house, get the bigger mortgage, and you talk yourself out of it. Just do it. Just go for it. Or they said, wow, what are you doing? You've got a job for life. Look at what you've
Hmm.
done in terms of your career and where you are and everything that you've got and how many days holiday. And that polarization I found was fascinating,
Hmm.
because it maybe it says something about mindset and why people go to work. But I thought it kind of buoyed me up, but made me think, well, everyone's different, and
Yeah,
therefore
yeah.
you can choose your own path.
Because do you think that, and I agree with you, but do you think
Mm,
of your general working population, most people fall into, I guess, one of the two camps where it's risk reduction, it's safer, it's the devil you go to work,
mm,
you do stuff, or you, it's taking the chance and people always say jumping out of the plane without building the parachute on the way down.
yeah,
But it's just, like my wife is a partner in a law firm. She's brilliant at what she does, but it's
mm,
very unlikely that she would start a business. And it's
yeah,
not that she doesn't have the
yeah.
talent, but I think some people are just wired to kind of, I'll touch that electric fence to see if it actually zaps.
Yes, yeah. And you're one of those, aren't you, Steve? I can just tell.
I am, but I think you
Yeah.
are, and I think a lot of people are. It's that balance of, it's not that you want to break the rules, but it's the
Hmm.
feeling of just like, I think I can do it better.
Hmm.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
I think it does. And for me, I think it was more about kind of breaking out. I could see that things, either were, for me, taking some time or could be done differently. And there was a good way of doing things, or you could break it
Hmm.
from the shackles. And for me, I think that's what it was. As in, are people in two camps? I think that's interesting. I think I've got a great belief that we all go to work at different times in our life for different reasons. And there I think now we have so much more choice about the work that we do. For people that choose self-employment, I think it's very, very brave. Often people want to spend more time doing the thing, the passion that they love. And when I worked up my career before, I got to the stage where I was managing teams of people, translating strategy, managing budgets, doing a lot of meetings. And while I could do it, the
Hmm.
fire had gone out. I
Hmm.
thought I really missed the thing that I was doing, and that was also a big driver. But interestingly, when you set up your own business, I think so many people don't realize just how much other stuff there is in managing and keeping a business
Hmm.
afloat, because
Hmm.
you don't have IT to drop a message to,
Hmm.
or marketing team or anything. You have to do a lot of this yourself and very quickly get good people on board. So you have to balance your time. You don't necessarily spend all the time doing the thing you love. Whereas, for example, if I'd moved to a small business, it
Hmm.
might have been that I could spend more time doing it in this collaborative context. So I think there are some people who always want to do something independent and have a calling. And now, of course, they can do it part time, or they can, jump into it. Whereas before it was very binary. You either, did it, or
Yeah.
you were employed. But I think for me, the important thing is that if someone has a dream, a wish, something that they go for, that they have somebody and a plan of how to get there, because life's very short. And I think also today happens to be National Mental Health Awareness Day, and just, doing things that you're passionate about, reducing stress, burnout, those kind of things that genuinely get us down and affect our mental and physical health. That's, I think it's good if people have a calling or something they want to do, that they answer it.
I don't know about you, but I was worried, or I felt that other people were holding me back. As silly as that sounds, even to the point
Yeah.
when I was doing my driving lessons, I thought, I can progress quicker than this. I don't see why he's making me reverse around the corner for 4 things in a row. He's just trying to make money off me.
Hmm.
I'm going to go in from a test early. But in your
Yeah.
career, I can do that. I can do that. Why am I not recognized at that level? And I think
Yeah.
it's a flaw I probably have, but it was that balance of, I kind of love now that there's nothing to hold me back. And I kind of love the risk of, I can climb as fast
Hmm.
as I want. But if it goes wrong, it is 100% on me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think being in business for some time, I've been through one big recession when it was the financial
Hmm.
crash, and people were saying to me, and of course, then we went through the pandemic,
Hmm.
and that literally just spins you around on your perch. And both of those times, people have said to me, "Don't you want a job? Don't you want some security that if anything happens, then at least you've got a job and a safety net?" And I said, "Well, it's interesting because for me, I have to get out of bed. My purpose is to earn money for me and anybody else that works in the team. And I know that I'm 100%, like you say, accountable
Hmm.
for that. And if I have a good plan and I work hard and I do things consistently, I know what I'm doing, and I listen to the market and my
Hmm.
clients, I know I'll do well."
Hmm.
And for me, at first it's scary because you think, "Oh my God, I have to earn the money, don't I?" And then you go, "Actually, I earn the money. I'm not at the behest of anybody else
Yeah.
who might just rock up one day and go, 'So here's the thing, we're closing this division, we're offshoring, we're relocating.'" And I think having that, once you get over the scary bit, it's actually quite empowering. But
Hmm.
the scary bit, it's just a huge mind spin for so many people, and I get it because I went through that.
No, I went through it as well. But so would you like to tell us about 42 Think?
Yeah, sure. So 42 Think is a boutique leadership consultancy. So we're based in the UK, so office in Covent Garden. That we've got 6 of us that are based throughout the UK, and also one in Malta. And all we do is specialize in developing leaders and managers, so people leaders, from brand new team leader right up to high potential boards, etc. And also, we work with teams, so particularly senior teams or operational teams who work together, helping them to become high performing. And the way that we do that, a whole range of different things. We work all typically in company with clients. So
Hmm.
we work with clients from very large SMEs to divisions of global commercial organizations, and we build a relationship with them, lift the lid on what's really going on, what they want with them at, at the end, and really work with them to make a difference to the individuals through, how do we do it? It's usually a range of blended learning, because, as you know, I'm quite into what goes on
Hmm.
inside the brain to
Hmm.
really help us learn. So that can be group workshops, that can be self-directed learning, could be coaching. We've got online learning, so a blend of accelerated learning. And so this is the third sort of iteration of self-employment in my business. And so I set this up 5 years ago after selling my stake in an international consultancy, a global consultancy. And the reason for the name, which sounds a bit weird, is I read a US social study, and they interviewed people from right across the United States. And one of the questions they asked was, in the past 12 months, have you withheld either a really great idea or a problem from your first line manager? And they took the results. And for those that had said yes, they asked them why. And 42% think there's no point in sharing either problem or idea, because either nothing will happen with it, or there's going to be some sort of personal retribution. There'll be some backlash. And I was just staggered by that. I thought 42%, that means, I think that's almost half. Even with my mediocre maths, I know that's almost half. Yeah, it's good. And I thought, what happens if a wheel's about to fall off? What happens if that's something that saves your process an extra step, or costs you and it gives you extra revenue, saves you something in terms of loss or costs, and they're keeping it to themselves. So I want to change that, and I think you change that in two ways: either by leaders genuinely creating this space. Psychological safety is something we hear a lot about, but is very, very important, so that people can ask questions, can suggest things, and the time, because particularly post-COVID, we just tend to be time poor and focus more on productivity rather than engagement. That's universal. But the other thing is helping people to have a voice instead of saying, well, there's no point. And we've all said that, oh, there's no point, nothing will happen. To come out from behind yourself and say, well, I'm going to say this. I'll find a good way of doing it. And of course, we're not talking about bullying or some of the extreme behavior where, of course, you have to protect yourself. But just in general day-to-day work is how to come out with those ideas and problems so that it could make a difference. And even if it doesn't, you've done your bit. So to help individuals to find their voice as well.
No, that's cool. It's true. With probably about 10, 12 years ago, I was in a job. And I figured out a way to probably triple my productivity. And I was asking the question about why didn't the team do it this way? And I got a bollocking for suggesting to do what I wanted to do, because their view was, oh yeah, but then people will ask questions about why haven't we done it like this before you joined? I mean, like, I got a proper telling off.
Really?
And I was like...
And I take it they didn't do it?
No. But it was that balance of where, and I've seen it a lot where, like, when I manage teams and do the stuff that I do, you want the ability to you want people to come forward, and it makes sense, but you do also get people that don't. Does that make sense? The one thing that really kind of gets me is that when you meet people that almost from day one, they're arse covering, so they don't actually want to get the best result for the business. It's how do I protect my position, my job, so I'm under less pressure. And it's, I guess, how, I was going to say, how would you tackle that one? But it's that you meet these different characters, these different animals in businesses. And I guess part of your job is to figure out, okay, what kind of animal are you? What do you do? What's your background?
Exactly.
And then making everyone play nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Because as well as that, we do work on some projects to help shape culture or climate, and help to understand, well, what are the behaviors and values that we support? And what does that even mean beyond a frame in reception? But I think, some people, whether they know it or not, they come from a place of their ego. Sometimes that's from a really bad experience and they're putting up a wall. But it's not helpful. It's not collaborative, and it's not in the spirit of a lot of businesses. And I think unless that behavior gets seen and constructively, positively challenged, and somebody works with that person in a safe space to help them understand the impact of their behavior, often people have had that done to them, and they either think, well, this is how you do it, this is how you role model it, or they think they don't realize, and they're overcompensating, and they think, oh my goodness, I didn't realize, I just didn't think that that's what I was doing, and that's the impact. So one of the things I'm passionate about is helping people to hold the mirror up, see how they think they behave, what they want to do behavior wise, because we can have the best intention, the best CV, qualifications, etc. But actually, we're judged on our behavior, rightly or wrongly. It's what we do and as you say, how we impact other people. So helping to people to hold the mirror up, helping them ideally get some feedback from other people, which can be hard to do, but there are a ton of different really good and sensitive ways of doing that. And then work with it. Say, well, is that enough? Do you want to change? And let's take little baby steps to help you get there.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
As a world leader in running workshops and programs, what makes a good workshop?
Oh, that's an exam question, Stephen. So much in there. I think is interesting. So for me, it goes beyond the workshop. So something you said early on, I absolutely agree with, is that it's not about this consumption of information or learning something. It's about creating or doing something with it. So one of the things I'm very passionate about is measuring the impact of learning and putting things into practice. And because what we do is kind of behavioral, it's working with skills and how you lead people, how you interact, how you influence or manage yourself. One of the things that's important to do is to start with you. So that's something that is always a golden thread, whatever we're doing, to help people understand themselves. I think it goes beyond a workshop then. So there needs to be some kind of lead-in support and accountability beforehand, and you've got to hold their feet to the fire afterwards, because otherwise you can get them to say at the end, what did you think of it? Yeah, it was great, but you don't know if that's made a difference, if they're going to put it into practice and really make a difference to their team. So absolutely, it's got to be part of something else. Either that's managed by the individual and you check in, or by the organization, or we can help with coaching. But actually, whether it be a workshop or coaching, for me, I think people learn most when they're challenged and supported, because challenge can be different things to different people. But when we're in that space, we really do learn well. So, and if the learning is what I call in the muscle, so it happens in the moment. I'm not a fan of really complex models or 10-step process. I like to work on the inner game. So helping to challenge beliefs and go beyond skills. So let me give you an example. One of the things inevitably that we stumble across is having tough conversations, whether it be about performance or with your manager or somebody else, a stakeholder. We can give people the best 5-stage checklist in the world, tell them all the principles, and they go, yes, of course, we know how to do that. But if one of your beliefs is, if you haven't got something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Or if one of your values at work is collaboration, being part of something, there is something deep wired in you, because our values are our on-off switches, and our beliefs are kind of our rules. There is something deep wired in you that will usually unconsciously stop you from doing that thing. So you'll say, yes, that's great, but actually, no, they've had a bad week. Or, well, that's right, but actually now I've got to do this spreadsheet. I'll have the conversation tomorrow. Or I don't want them to feel uncomfortable, whereas really we don't want to feel uncomfortable. So we pull at those threads, some of the stuff that actually causes our behavior. So we know from neuroscience, we know from values and beliefs, that there are things going on in our wiring, if you like, physically and mentally, that influence our behavior. And if we can go beyond, oh, here's a checklist, this is a model, these are the principles, this is what you're like, then you are absolutely going to accelerate change, and you're going to see people put things into practice.
No, it's when you do see personality types that just avoid stuff, even if everyone knows what to do.
Yeah.
But they kind of look for the excuse not to do things, especially as a student. My big thing was my house was immaculate, because if to avoid doing work or doing revision, I would just clean. That's one big thing there. But it's true, people avoid stuff that they don't want to do. But actually, as a seamless segue from what you were talking about, the things that we tell ourselves, the stories, the messages, that kind of thing. Do you want to talk about NLP?
Yeah, happy to do that. So as you know, I'm an NLP master practitioner. So I studied that about 10 years, maybe 12 years ago. And for those that aren't familiar with it, it's a body of theory and tools, a big toolkit about high performance. And it sounds very grand, neuro-linguistic programming, but it's effectively how what goes on inside our head, our behavior, our language influence our results and the life we lead at work and beyond. And I was driven to do that because a friend who'd studied it, because I work so much with people and helping them
Mm-hmm.
reach their potential and unlocking things. And she'd said, you will uncover a whole level of blockers, of understanding, of tools to help people. And alongside that, I also did a master hypnotherapy qualification as well, which I wasn't so keen on until I realized that it had a lot of language in there. And when we were studying to pass the exam, two things happened that were very good. First of all, we were challenged and supported, like, massively. One of the things we did in hypnotherapy was unpick Barack Obama's inauguration speech, because there is a lot of what we call hypnotic language patterns in there, which is about how we can influence people through our words. The other thing we had to do was to work with people in the room and each other on our stuff, because we've all got stuff, don't we, that kind of hold us back, our excuses, limiting beliefs. And so I could see firsthand, hey, if I use these tools on other people, I've just felt how it makes a difference to me. So I don't overtly tell people about it, but we all have our tools in the toolkits, and that, together with what I've learned about neuroscience, for me just gives a brilliant insight into what's behind behavior and how we show up.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's cool. And I think the first time I really discovered it was Tony Robbins used to talk about it quite a lot. And it's and actually Ashley that presents on this channel did an NLP course recently. But the thing for me, it's about having, I guess, tools and things that you can call on in different scenarios at different times in your life, just as ways to handle different things or do different things. And it's just as someone that has done something in that space and almost done your qualifications, I like to pick people's brains, and people are kind of interested in it. So I've got to know, for the business, what's your dream?
Oh, interesting. So for me, excuse me, I'm just recovering from what I'm calling cold that turned into COVID. The dream is to keep on doing this. So at the moment, the model is work with a small group of people who are brilliant at their game. We've got similar values, and collaborate together on interesting projects with clients who really value their people. So to continue doing that. And the goal is now to move more into, with the advent of digital, to move more into the digital space with a hybrid self-managed online learning with some support as well. So to keep doing this. So my goal is to keep doing this, not to do it quite at the pace of 6 days a week, 10 hours a day that I did do when I first started, but to get genuinely that balance. But to do this for the next 5-7 years and see where it takes me.
I think that's a really good goal, because with it, so when I was doing my thing, it was almost, you start and you're just desperate to survive, just any money from anywhere, just to pay a part of your mortgage for that, but that's a mindset for a while. And then you get to a point where you kind of, okay, so you got some regular income, you're doing all right. And then it's the balance of, I call it oxygen, but any spare cash that the business generates, you can then reinvest to make a better, bigger, more efficient machine. But it's still your call at a certain point where, if you build a bigger machine, you have to feed it. It's a monster that gets bigger and bigger and hungrier. That likewise, if you want to work 3 days a week and do the cool stuff that you want to do, it might not actually be the right thing to do to build a big business, because then you'll end up working 6 days a week, 10 hours a day to feed the business that you wanted to be much smaller. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, I always used to joke that for me, I wanted to work 4 days a month, sit on the beach, travel, do whatever I want, but that'll pay for everything. And I'm not quite taking it that far, but the idea of the mechanism and the dream and the model doesn't have to be, I want to be on the world's Forbes rich list.
Yes.
It depends on what you want, but often what you see on social media and stuff is get rich, 10x this and do that. And a lot of people, most people are like, well, I don't really want that. And I think that's, what sometimes people misunderstand about entrepreneurs and that culture is that you can find and live off profitably 30 grand a year and just do the bits you want to do. You don't have to do 10 grand a month to take on debt and remortgage your house and go crazy. Because it depends what you want. And it's just, I think it's just, I'm always interested about different people's goals. That, like, why do you do what you do? Talk about a big question. What gets you out of bed every day now?
Well, it is about this purpose. It's about making a difference and leaving a legacy with people. And I think if every day, every week, we collectively can give people tools, can enable conversations, help teams work better when they spend a lot of time working with them, then that really fires me up. So that's important. And I do think it's important to have that purpose. And I love what I do. So interesting what you said when I mentioned that I was previously shareholder and director of an international consultancy. And our goal was about building the business, getting more people in there and growing it for various reasons. And we did that very successfully. I learned so much, worked with a brilliant bunch of people, where they got to a stage where, once again, it just, the fire went out and I was working far too long. I was traveling, and the things that really mattered in life, family, health, a balance in life. If you're passionate about something, it's really easy to get completely consumed by it, spend a lot of time, and that's not necessarily a healthy thing. And I realized that actually there came a time where I stopped and I thought, hang on, am I enjoying it? And I wasn't anymore. I'm a bit grumpy. Am I looking after my health and spending time with the people that I love? Because, the numbers were great. And I realized that all the reasons why I was doing this, I wasn't fulfilling. So once again, I very gracefully sold my shares, handed over, and took some time off. And I thought, right, I'll do different projects. I'll work for other people on contract, self-employed, as and when. 6 months later, bored as anything. I thought, right. And that's when 42 Think was born. So I know, and I think this is important for any entrepreneur to think about. You may go through this journey. You may have to try on different hats to realize what you want to do. But the better you know your values and why you're doing this, because I think lots of people want to do this, but having a passion, well, what will it look like? Let's try on some scenarios for size. Do I mind working 10 hours a day? Do I mind meeting all sorts of people, doing my knitting every day to get business? Or is it about me doing the job that I love? And it's not about the money or the success or the profile online. And I think particularly nowadays, where it can be really easy to get sucked into what are other people doing, or as you say, you increase your revenue 10 times by doing this quick fix, which we know isn't there. Just be really true to yourself. Know what's important to you and why you're doing that, because then that'll keep your head straight when the inevitable bumps come along the road.
No, cool. So towards like the end of the interviews, I have a few kind of standard questions which I kind of clip up and go onto YouTube and different stuff. You kind of half answered it just then, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just in case it's a different kind of question. Would you be happy to share the best piece of advice you've ever had?
Oh, there's a lot in there, but the one I'm going to go for is have difficult conversations up front. And I'm sharing that because that's one that I wish that I'd learned many, many years ago. Just to briefly expand on that, it was because I was in a scenario where we were merging 3 different companies, and we just tied it up after going through all the difficult situations with the shareholders and the directors. And then at the last board meeting, one of my colleagues said, what about if somebody wants to leave? And I said to him, what are you talking about? We're already happy. We've finally got to agreement, and you're talking about leaving. And he said to me, I'll never forget this. He said, this is exactly the time we want to talk about this, because there's going to come a time where someone's tired, someone wants to do something different, and we need to know what to do. And if we all agree it now and put it in the shareholders' agreement, then we need to never talk about it again. And I just think that's in anything, in contracts, in employment, in relationships, in life, I think that's a brilliant bit of wisdom.
I've done 100 of these now, and that's really good. Nobody's ever said that before. But again, which is the beauty of speaking to lots of different people from different backgrounds, is that I get to absorb all of this stuff. But you're completely correct. But it's, people always jump into stuff thinking about all the positives, and you are 100% correct. What if it goes wrong? It's just the whole pre-mortem kind of thing of just trying to figure out, and just different. I work with different businesses where you have owners of the same business but at different ages, and because of that, they have different desires. So if you're in your 50s, it's a difference if you're in your 40s. And it's that kind of thing of where often, I think you're right, there's always so many unspoken things that go on that yes, it might be a difficult conversation, but actually, will you be happier? Because honestly, I think that's really, really good.
Yeah.
If one of the other questions I was also like to ask, if you were to give advice to your younger self, so you could pick you at school, you at 16, whatever, if you could give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Okay, that's quite a deep one. My gut instinct is going to be everything will turn out okay, because I think at certain times in running your own business in life, we hit some really big bumps in the road, and we think, oh my goodness, and it seems insurmountable. But do you know what? Every problem that you've got through, or every problem you've faced, you've got through, and I think just that reassurance that it is going to be okay and find your path.
No, again, really good. And it's true, like with so many times when you look back and you think, oh well, the world's ended.
Yes, yeah.
But actually, often for me, ironically, the toughest times is when you learn the most. But actually, it's all data points on that course correction. So you've got when I was doing my PhD, on day one, sat with my supervisor, he showed me this graphic, and it was to do with the ship, and there was rocks either side and jaggedy stuff and alligators. And the idea was his job was just to keep you off the rocks. But the point is that those learning points, those data points, you're going down that river regardless. So like,
you're absolutely right.
If something happens or you get made redundant or whichever, because I got made redundant in the 2008 recession as well, and in the 2014 oil price crash, but I wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for all of those things, and all of them at the time were horrible, but I wouldn't change it. And it's a brilliant piece of advice. Is there anything you would like to talk about and plug before we go?
Very briefly, we are, thank you for letting me do this, Steve. We are bringing out some self-managed leadership online programs, some intense programs based on a model we use called Prism, which you can now buy on the website. So this is a self-assessment to help you understand your leadership style and your personal behavioral preferences based on neuroscience, which is really cool. It's got credibility, and it's one we use particularly at senior level with with leaders, etc. So you can now buy that online, 42think.co.uk, and coming soon in early November, we've got a series of online courses that people can manage themselves or get coaching or go through with other people there as well. So I shall share the details with that when they're up and running.
No, cool. Well, because actually the guy that normally edits my videos is actually on holiday. How rude is that? I mean, I've got to edit my own videos. But anyway, so when I edit it and clip it up, feel free to tag. Actually, to be honest, I'll do the quick way after this, but you put it in the comments just in case anyone is interested.
Yeah.
Just out of interest, I love working on new stuff. So almost when you were coming up with these online portals and the ideas and the self-learning and that kind of thing, are you one of these people that likes creating new stuff, or do you hate it? Because I understand both. It's like a poison chalice where it's a great idea, but the pain to put it in place is so big that just out of interest.
I love it, and I'm very creative. I've just got to be careful that I don't do too much, don't spend too much time doing that, and that I do the follow through. But usually I subcontract people who are really good at the follow through and the detail on the process, and I engage them early on, so they go, I need this from you next week. Oh yes, you do. So yeah, I absolutely love the creative bit, the new ideas, the testing the market, the front end. It's the deliverables and the detail, etc., that other people are far better at than me.
Fair enough. Well, Susie, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you kind of sharing your story and your journey, and obviously we had a really good chat about leadership development and everything else that we've kind of covered. These will all get clipped up and go on to YouTube and all the platforms I kind of mentioned before. Susie, you can reach out to her on LinkedIn and all the other platforms. You'll see the kind of comments and stuff. But no, thank you for your time, and I'm sure I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, that's my pleasure, and thanks for everyone for watching.
Cool.
See you again. Thanks again, Steve. Take care. Bye-bye.